My name is David Klipner. I'm the Director of Education and Wildlife at the Leslie Science and Nature Center in the Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum. Thanks so much for joining me today, and a big thanks to Toyota for making this workshop possible, and then of course for creating this fun contest. The Toyota Dream Car Art Contest, which is why we're here today. Now, to do this workshop, you're going to need two things. First, you're going to need this sheet. This is the Artist's Assistant Guide. This is a pretty awesome sheet here. It's for your adult assistant. It tells them everything they need to do to support you in your artwork. So teachers and parents should read this and learn how to be a good assistant for you. All the information about the contest is on this sheet and can be found on the website. So make sure that they visit the website here, toyotadreamcarusa.com. This is where they can find all the information that they need to do to support you, but also they can find out about the rules. And I know there are no rules in art, but there are rules in contests. So it's important that we look at those before you create your final submission. The second sheet is for us. This is just an overall. The second sheet is for us. This is just a short outline of what we're going to be doing today. There are spaces on the back for you to practice our work, but you don't have it, no problem. The second sheet is for us. This is just a short outline of what we're going to be doing today. There are spaces on the back for you to practice, but if you don't have this sheet, no problem. You don't need it. We can just go ahead and use some scrap paper. And that's mostly what I'm going to be doing today. So, let's get started. The first step said brainstorm. So brainstorming is what we need to do. Now for me, I need to make sure in order to brainstorm that I have all the stuff that I need set up for my space. This means that I need the tools that I might think I would need to work on my art. It also means that I would need things that makes me feel creative. So in my space, I like, let's see, I have these pictures back here. I use these photos a lot. I put pictures of things that I like or that I really appreciate. These are just some nature photos that I really enjoy. These are just coasters, so you can find photos that you are interested in. I also have some different models here for me to work with, like this little car if I were drawing cars. Now, you also notice that I have some dramatic lighting. Look at all the shadows that occur. Now, it's important that you have a well-lit surface, so wherever you're going to draw has to have nice light. But I also like to have a hard light pushing down on objects so that when I look at them, I can see how the light shines off of them. So if I turn to the side of this car, for example, you can see where the light shines and shows me these bright light spaces are the spots that are closest to me. So I like to have light like that, but you don't necessarily need that. I also need to have tools. I might like to have a ruler, for example, or even a protractor, or other shapes that help me draw straight lines if that's what I want to do. So I can go like this, put this down to draw a couple straight lines, just like that. So you might not need these, but these are tools that I like to have if I'm going to be drawing. I also want to make sure that I have pencil sharpeners like this, or like this one. There's a bunch of different kinds. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because pencils are pretty much the only thing that you definitely have to have. If you have, or something to draw with. If you have a pencil though, make sure you have erasers so that you can practice. And that's important because today you're going to be practicing. This is not going to be your overall submission. We're just practicing our art. So it's not important that you finish your art piece today. In fact, that should take quite a while. You're going to do a lot of practicing. So your space might look different than this one, but one thing that I'm going to tell you, or two things that I think that you should all have is something to drink. Make sure you have some water so you can stay hydrated. And then also I like to have a notepad nearby so in case I need to write a couple of notes, I can write down thoughts that I had while I was brainstorming so that I don't forget. You can use our worksheet too, but I always make sure that I have a notepad there just in case. Once your space is all ready, you can get to work. And brainstorming can sometimes be the hardest part because you have to get started. Just remember that your art piece should tell the person that's looking at it something that you want them to think or feel. When I look at a car, I try to think about what cars do. Now we know that sometimes they have wheels, almost all the time they have wheels, and they get people from place to place. But that is just a regular car. You're creating a dream car. That means it could be anything. There are no rules. So you have to think about what do I like about cars? What do I like about cars and what do I think is important? And not even just about cars, but what do you like about life? What do you like about the world? And then try to make your art show that those are things that you like or appreciate. So you could start by just thinking, what are some words or phrases that you think you want people to think or say to themselves when they see your art? This could be just simple words like happy. It could be excited. They could be saying, I really want this car. I wish I had one of these. So what are the things that you want them to think or say when they see your art? Reminder, write these down. For example, I really like food, but I like to grow my own food. So I could have a restaurant in my car, or I could even have a garden in my car, and I could grow food inside my car. How cool would that be? I could just travel around with my garden. So there are no rules there. Remember, you have to put the dream in dream car. Don't forget, these are all things that you should be writing on your notebook. Make sure you keep track of all of your ideas. You might change your mind later, but that's okay. That's why it's important to put this down. Even if you think this is the greatest idea ever, I'm never going to forget it. Write it down. Lastly, my favorite thing that you can do is just have conversations. Share your ideas with your friends or your assistant. Now, your ideas are probably going to change a little as you work on your piece, but that's part of the fun. Once you've decided all the details that are going to go into your actual car, or you at least have some doodles and sketches, maybe even a list of some different ideas, you need to start thinking about what's going on around your car. This means you have to figure out the background. It's going to be way more interesting if you can tell more of your story using the background. This big car right here just floating on top of a white piece of paper is only so interesting, and it only gives you a little bit of space to tell your story. But in the background, if there was some land in the background and maybe some trees going on, you can tell a lot more about the things that you appreciate in the space. So think about where you're going to do. Maybe a rock over here. I might like a rock in my land. Maybe I like rocks and trees. But either way, the background cannot be forgotten. It's part of what you need to include in your art, and it's a great opportunity to add all those things from your list. Because again, you can't fit maybe everything on your car, but think of all the stories you could tell with the background when you show where your car is or how you want the world to be around your car. Okay, now brainstorming doesn't really end. You're going to continue to do that all the way through all of your practices drawings and through your entire project. But we're going to move on to step 2. Pick a medium. So a medium is just what you use to do your illustration. Here I got things written like crayons and markers and colored pencils, so we'll explore those a little bit. Now you can use this sheet, or again, you can just use a scrap piece of paper. I have a bunch of crayons just sitting here, and I love crayons. There's all kinds of different sizes too. Look at this huge crayon I have. So if I wanted to experiment with these mediums to find out what kind I might like, I'm just going to take a piece of paper or a sheet, and I'm going to practice by seeing what they look like. Now all I'm going to do is just scribble around and practice and play. So I'm going to start with these crayons. So you can see here, I'm just scribbling some different colors down. I might actually try to draw lines with them as well. See what a line looks like when I use as a crayon. Or maybe a really light line. Don't push too hard and see what happens. Nice skinny line. Lines are really important to practice. So next to my crayons, I can also try, if you noticed, markers. I have a lot of markers. I like a bunch of different colors. So I'll just grab one, like this color. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll scribble a little bit of marker. What does this look like? Okay, maybe draw some lines. What does a line look like with my marker? Maybe a really thin line. If I just barely push. Well, that's interesting. When I push really easy with the marker, it's harder to make a really light line. But with the crayon, I can make a dark line and a light line very easily. So that's important to remember for our markers. And finally, I have colored pencils here. Here's some colored pencils. So let's try maybe orange. I'm in an orange mood. Let's try this orange pencil. So in order to try that, I'll do the same thing. Just do a little scribble. I like that. Draw a nice thick line. Maybe if I try really easy with a pencil. Oh. Interesting. I'm also able to draw a thin line with this one, so that's kind of cool. So let's see, which one do I like? I kind of like them all. And that's okay too. Check this out. I can mix my pencil with my crayons. What if I wanted to mix it with my marker and color in the spaces between these two marker lines? I can totally do that. It doesn't matter. Remember, there's no rules here. You just want to experiment and play. The important thing here is just to keep trying some different stuff out. You're going to find really quickly which one you like. You might already have a favorite. That's totally cool too. But you should experiment a little bit. Practice and explore. Now you can do some little bit of shading here. I said try different shading techniques, and you can do them in these squares, or again, we can just go to our scrap piece of paper. Now, this is sort of like shading, but what I want to really focus on now is thinking about how can I make my images pop off of the paper and give them some dimension, make them look like they're objects floating in the air instead of just flat on the piece of paper like they are now. Right now, this rock has a little bit of dimension because I put some dark shading in there, but what if we were to use colors for that? So let's see. This is a tree, so it probably makes sense that I can make it green, even though it doesn't have to be. There's no rules. So I'll take this green crayon, and I'm just going to draw some green here. Side of this tree. Cool, I like that. Maybe this trunk has a different color. Get some brown, right, for the wood. Cool, get some brown in there. Now, I got some colors, and what I want you to notice about this, by putting these colors on here, is look how awesome this tree looks now that it's popping off the page. And the reason that is because we have white back here, and then a dark green. This light color next to the dark color makes this come forward. It makes it look like it's standing up closer to you. So this is a really easy way to create space in your illustration, is by adding contrast. And colors are a really easy way to do that. So for example, over here, there's a lot of dark space on this side, and I guess I could just pick a different color here. Just take my crayon to really, really color that in and shade it. And now look at that rock pop. And as I get closer to the lighter side, I'm just going to push a little lighter. And before you know it, it looks like that rock is coming off the page. Not that bad. Now behind the rocks, I would want to make stuff look a little bit less detailed usually. So for example, if I had something way, way far away, you're not going to be able to see as many details. So I can put less details in the stuff that's far away. And right now, these are kind of scribbly tree and scribbly rock, so that's not a big deal. But if I wanted this to seem like that car was closer to you, then I have to do something to it to make it pop up off of the page. So I can do the same thing I did here with my rock and tree to here. And I can use, let's see, maybe I'll use, I really like crayons. Maybe I'll use colored pencils for this one. So I don't want to do my, not as much in an orange mood already. I kind of changed my mind. I'm sort of feeling blue. But this really light blue. I like this one. So now I can just add a little bit of shape right here along the outside. Same kind of thing I was doing with my rock. And I'm just going to start shading. So if I do this blue, color it in a little bit. Now, what's important here, and what I want you to see, is how I shade to make it seem like this is actually round. I'm going to make it really dark next to the edge, and then towards the front, the part that's closest to you, I'm going to make it lighter. Just like we learned on our model. When we look at it here, the part that's closer to you with the light has the shiny reflective parts where it's really bright. And then along the edge, it gets darker and darker. So I want to do that same thing that I learned by watching how the light points on top of my car. So I'm going to make it really dark over here. Matter of fact, I could even use different colors if I wanted to. So for example, I could get a darker color and make it really dark around the edges. If I make it really dark, look what happens. All of a sudden, it starts to look like this is disappearing behind it, because that's not where the light's hitting it strong. Check that out. This is just me practicing. Remember, this isn't my illustration. I'm practicing and exploring. So you're just exploring the different mediums. You're practicing some different things like shading. I think another really cool thing that you can do is you can make something seem like it's further away by making the lines different thicknesses. Remember when we practiced our lines down here and we had a thin line and a dark line? Well, we can try that again on our image. Let me try. I can make this really, really thick. on the outside. Really thick line on the outside. And then as it goes around, it gets really thin. See this thick up top? And then I'm going to push lighter and lighter until I'm not pushing hard. So now this thicker line makes it seem like it's closer to you, and this makes it seem like it's further away. Don't forget, you're just exploring here, so practice and have fun. You're going to take a long time to probably come up with your final submission piece. So it's important that at this stage, you're just doing more brainstorming and more practicing and exploring. So I'll give you one more idea of how you can actually explore the mediums. If you want to really get a good idea of how light interacts with different objects, you get some objects and you put light on it. So notice here, this is definitely round. This is this cylinder. And when I look at when the light shines on it, look what happens to the colors. I get a little tiny line of light color where it's reflecting off of my hand. I get a really dark color, a really bright color where the light's shining the most, and then some medium colors on into dark again. And all of these tell me that this is round. I also notice with some of the shapes when I start changing the direction of where the different object's going to be. If I'm looking at it straight on, it looks nice and flat on the top and it just looks like almost a rectangle. But if I turn it towards me a little bit, notice that this little circle starts to reveal itself and it gets wider and wider the more that I turn it until finally it's a full circle. So by exploring objects like this, it can help you with your illustrations. You can make this seem more round by just simply making dark on the sides and light in the middle or off to the side where the light's coming from. So try that. Once you send in your submission, judges are going to look at it. Have your assistant check out the website for all of the different rules like we talked about before, but if you notice here, the scoring criteria is also going to be listed. So execution of concept, that the artwork expresses the theme and concepts in an understandable way. So this just means that all of those ideas that you were writing down in your list, did you make sure that your artwork told that story? And uniqueness of concept. So is this out of your imagination? This is where I remind you again to put the dream in dream car. Don't forget that this is your idea or perfect car and world that you're creating. So get creative. And then artistry of concept. So all of the things that we were practicing with the shading, how are you using your colors to create contrast and light, and then making sure that things look far away or closer together and that they blend really nicely together and it makes sense when I look at it. Let's explore some previous contest entries to see if we can see some of those different three things that the judges are going to study for your art. Check this one out. This is an octopus for sure, but it's not just an octopus. Look inside. There are people inside of it driving this, and they're doing some really fun stuff in there. I don't know what they're doing on this little counter. Maybe they're making some food. Remember we talked about that earlier? But there's also a lot of light beams coming out of here. Love that. So I can tell that there's lights on inside, and they have all these little bubbles with interesting things that they enjoy and love. And check out this leg. Remember we talked about to make it seem like this was actually a round leg and then it has some shape to it. There's a nice dark line on the outside and then it gets lighter and lighter as it goes in towards the center. So now I can tell that this is kind of round, which is pretty cool. They used the contrast to show me that and changing the different colors. I like that one a lot. Let's look at another one. Look at this one. This is a really beautiful bird. But it's a bird car. I can see that there's wheels down here, which is kind of neat. And then, so it must land eventually. There's also a steering wheel, so I can tell someone's probably driving it. But I love the background in this one. Look how you can see where it's at. It's in the sky, and they use contrast to make it pop up. But then look into this corner where it's flying into. This says planet. So because it's a planet, that must mean this is a really, really high car. Also, it looks like some spaceship here that's hanging out, which is pretty cool. And I like how all of these different characters are hanging out and playing. You can see the smiles on. I think this robot might be my favorite. But it looks like they're dancing and having a good time. So they really enjoy having a good time and dancing, it looks like. Also inside this car, check out all the things that they enjoy. I see some people doing science on this side, on this wing part of the car. And I see some other people doing music. Look at the dancing that's happening down here. And they're dancing and playing a piano. They're doing art down here. There is a lot going on. And that's really kind of fun too about art is I like pieces where I can look at it for a long time and always see something new and interesting. Look at everything that's going on here. Now I can tell by the planets in the background that they're up in space, which is very exciting already. I'm very interested. But I love the contrast. Look how this squid looking car pops off of the page because the background's so dark and then the car is so light. So that's really, really exciting. I love this contrast right here on the edge that's coming back. It makes it feel like it's popping off the page right at me. So it looks real. And then further away, one thing that they did was some of the plants were smaller because they're further away, but they also had less detail. Do you see how this one is yellow with a blue line around it? So I can see that it's a planet. But the planet that's closer to you, up here in the corner, has a lot of lines going across to let me know that there's details of swirling going on. So a lot more details when it got closer. Look at this. It looks really warm in here in the middle where someone's swinging. This one looks cold, and there's a snowman and a penguin. There's a lot going on here. Okay, this one might be my favorite. This one definitely tells me a story. First of all, look at all the contrast. This light blue over top of that dark blue really helps this pop up to make it feel like that's closer. There's also more details going on. Obviously, there's robots, so you kind of have me at robot. The robot driving this one. It's pretty fun. And then there's a lot of gardening going on, and look at all the contrast and details down on the earth. You can see there's some shadows there popping out along the bottom. That's kind of fun. It makes them look like they're popping off the page. But this one definitely tells a story. There's some words here to help us. This is called the eco car, and then also they wrote down green energy. So it tells me something that they care about, that they think is important. And I would know that even if they didn't write it, because look at this car, how it has wind turbines on there, and also, did you notice that? A bunch of little solar panels. So they're really concerned and interested in green energy. My favorite detail that I think I just saw is that instead of smoke coming out for the exhaust, look what's coming out of this car while it's driving. Flowers. These flowers are flying out of the back of all these little cars and just dropping them down onto the earth. That's pretty exciting. I like that one. And then there's different things dropping out of the different cars. This one has little lightning bolts, so it's energy. It looks like it's powering this power station. Very, very cool stuff. Lots of details and lots of storytelling in the background. So make sure you're telling your story. Hopefully that gives you a good idea of how to get started on your contest entry. Don't forget to have your assistant read their handout and visit the website. And don't forget to have fun. Start with writing those ideas down and keep drawing. If you had fun today and want to check out more workshops and virtual programs from the Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum and the Leslie Science and Nature Center, check out our websites. I hope to see you soon. Have fun and don't forget to put the dream in Dream Car.